As part of the Sweat Elite Training Talk series, we're having a few new guests on over the next few months. And I thought it'd be great to have sort of a range of levels of the marathon, as in terms of the guests come on. So today I've actually got a good friend of mine from the Gold Coast, Marty Bordignon, joining me on the podcast. So Marty just did the Osaka Marathon, and I sort of joined him in a lot of the training in the lead up to the Osaka Marathon. And we've been in contact for a few years now, talking about all things running, all things content. And there'll be a few more guests coming on the training talk in the next few weeks that are one guy that's a bit faster than me, 212, and we've also got a 231 guy coming on as well. So I'll save more information about those guys in future podcasts. But Marty, thanks for joining. You're calling in from the Gold Coast, which is where we both live. I guess we can start by talking a bit about the Osaka Marathon that happened a couple of weeks back, where you ran a PB. So let's get started with talking about how the race went for you before we talk more about the build-up and all the other fun things about running, content, and so forth.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Matt. Been a long-term listener, and it's nice to be here. And obviously, it's my first podcast as well. So if I'm a bit nervous or come across as nervous, then I hope that's okay. Osaka went really well. I'll give myself a B+ for Osaka. There's still a few things I'd like to improve on, but I ended up running 2:46:05, which is roughly a 4-minute PB for me, in the space of about, I'll call it 8 months. So, really happy with the result. A few things that I can tweak, easy things as well, that I think will help me in my next race, which I'm sure we'll get into. But overall, really happy, very consistent over the two halves. I was 122 high in the first half and 123 low in the second half. So I can't be too disappointed with that result. I'm just looking forward to learning from that and applying a few different things in training and then applying that into Gold Coast. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a pretty well-paced run, 122 high, 123 low. You know, I obviously watched your training in the lead up to Osaka, and one thing that's interesting about you, that's the total opposite to me, is that you quite like training in the heat. And we just went through, the summer in Australia, where you did a marathon build through the middle of the summer, which is pretty brutal for people that struggle in the heat like myself. But you faced it head on, got through the build, pretty much unscathed without too many issues. To run a race so evenly paced, 122 high, 123 low for a 2:46:05 is clearly shows that you're learning a lot about the marathon in terms of pacing it well and so forth. I think one thing that we both share in common in terms of the sort of philosophy about training for the marathon and racing the marathon, and this is also shared by your coach, Kyle Weise, who's now helping me with my training. He's a very good physio as well. Is we sort of believe a lot in the idea of not getting too worked up about or too obsessed with the numbers and the data, and trying to run more to feel an effort more than anything else. Also, in training, but then also in a race. So I guess before we talk more about that, specifically about sort of training to feel, I want to ask a little bit sort of a question that will lead more to talking about that. And that's, what made you interested in starting running in the first place? And how did you originally approach your training and racing, sort of psychologically, probably more than anything else? Like, were you a big numbers person to begin with? And I guess just talking more about like what was interesting about the marathon in the first place to you to get started.
Yeah, well, I think I was drawn to the marathon originally purely because I used to live right on the course of Gold Coast Marathon. So it was a short walk for me to just go down and watch the elites, hammer past at 3-minute Ks, which has always got me really motivated. And I thought to myself, one day I will do that. But what got me into running before I even sort of got hooked on the marathon was I was always a very sporty teenager. Like, I did a lot of sports, boxing, AFL, rugby league, tennis, and I was a jack of all trades, master at none. So I was kind of good across all, but wasn't really great at one in particular. So once I finished school and went into the workforce, I kind of just gave up all forms of exercise completely and got sort of caught up in the corporate world. And diet went out the window, exercise went out the window, and it wasn't until probably 10 years later. So basically my whole 20s, I didn't do anything. And then once I turned 30, I came to a realization I need to do something. And running was the easy option for me because I could just walk out the door and start. And it started off as a 1 kilometer plod to then, knocking out, 10Ks, got to 20Ks. And then I thought, I'm going to enter a marathon. So Gold Coast Marathon 2019 was my first one. And I was just hooked from there. I just really got intrigued with how to get better, who to follow, who to take advice from, and basically it just stemmed from there.
Yeah. And so who did you find most interesting to follow, or what did you enjoy following? Was there any books or any sort of people, personalities? I know you obviously joined Kyle pretty early on in your running career, which I think has really served you well because, you've improved quite a lot. And I know that he has very high, maybe expectations, or at least a vision for you to run quite a lot faster than you already have. So what did you find most interesting in terms of inspiration to then start progressing down that marathon path?
Yeah, I think like a lot of people, around that time, I can't remember what year Elliot ran the 159 project. I can't remember.
I think it was 2018.
Yeah, so I think I watched that in the lead up. I think that's probably why I ended up entering Gold Coast Marathon the following year. I think that really got me. Like a lot of other people, I've actually never thought about that. That was probably a real inspiration for a lot of people. That 2018 and then 2019 running started to take off as well a little bit. So, so that was probably a big motivation for me, is watching him run that race. I just remember sitting in my lounge room and watching it live with a few mates, and we just thought, how cool is this, that none of us are really runners, yet we're watching this unfold. So that was really cool. In terms of books, I think you and I are on the same page. I think I might have recommended that book to you, How Bad Do You Want It? But that was sort of came to me later on, with really trying to I guess dig deep into how I could perform better over the marathon. And that's when I started going into more of the mental side rather than the physical side, which really I'm so interested in, and that seems to keep evolving. So I'd like to talk about that later on, but yeah, they're the two factors I would say that really got me into running and kept me interested.
Yeah. And sort of leading back to Osaka, where you ran 2:46:05, I think in the lead up to that race, I hope you don't mind me being honest, I thought I saw some things in your training, more specifically like marathon specific workouts that Kyle was scheduling for you. We're talking about 5K intervals, 10-minute efforts at marathon effort in the heat. And you were doing a lot of these marathon sessions at marathon effort. And I think I know you well enough to know that when you say you run at marathon effort, you actually are. Some people aren't very honest about that, I don't think. They are. Instead, they might be running close to max effort, but they call it marathon effort. Some people listening might be able to resonate with that. I actually, you were doing a lot of these marathon effort workouts at probably about 2:41, 2:42, 2:43 marathon pace in the heat. So I actually thought maybe sub 2:40 was on the cards, and I was pumping you up a little bit before that might be a goal for you. Yeah, 2:46, you ran a PB by several minutes, so you have to be stoked about that. There's never any reason to feel like that was running a personal best is a disappointment, and I was stoked, and especially given that you even split it. But I guess what I'm getting at is, like, do you think that your training shape leading into Osaka indicated that you were in better shape than 2:46? Like, and you don't have to I wouldn't just agree with me on that. I'd try and be honest with me, because sometimes I might be a bit too optimistic about people's performances based on what I see. So yeah, I'd be keen to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to go a few minutes faster. I didn't want to put an exact number on it, but I was really hoping to go 2:44 at the bare minimum. It's in training. Yeah, you're right. I probably did show signs of an early 2:40s marathon. it would be ambitious to think that I would have broken 240. I don't think that could have happened on that day. I kind of went into Osaka with the approach the same way I did the year before. So I'm a big believer that it's really hard to perform well in an international marathon where you don't have your regular routine. You're flying in a few days early, you're getting poor sleep, nutrition's different. So I tend to take these international races seriously, like I do, but I don't go for big swings at these races. Whereas last year I went to Osaka, I ran 255, and then 4 months later I backed it up at Gold Coast and ran 249. So that was a big jump, which is what I'll try and do again this year. I will try and take a swing at trying to run 240 or a little bit quicker, like try and break 240 essentially. I'm not afraid to put that goal on the table. If I swing and miss and land somewhere in between, that's also okay. Marathon's a learning game, so it's not a big issue for me. But that's the approach I went in with this race. And I think there was a few things at the start of the race, like in terms of where I was positioned at the start line, that affected me. And I'll learn from that. I knew it in the back of my head, but I probably didn't take it as seriously as I should have. And then there's also the halfway split. When I went through halfway and I knew I was off by 10, 15 seconds at the halfway line, halfway split, I think that played with me mentally as well to say, all right, well, I have to negative split now to run 244. And I think that played on my mind in the back end. And if I knew at 38K that I was still on for 244, maybe I would have fought that a little bit harder to really make that happen. So there's a lot of what ifs, of course, but I think, yeah, my training did indicate that I could run faster than that. And I know deep down that I can. So, yeah, but that's okay. I'm still happy with it. But again, I'm just hungry to run faster now.
Yeah. One of the coolest things about the marathon, and we joke about this from time to time, is that you never hear anyone say, I just nailed that. I can't run any faster. There's always something that you can do better every single race. And it's sort of, I think, why the marathon can become kind of addictive in a way, because you never do a block and then race it and go, well, I don't know how I can possibly do any better than that. And so there's always time to make up and little things that you can do differently. And talking about things that you can do differently, I mean, talking about the training for Osaka, how would you describe Kyle's and your overall philosophy to training for the marathon? I mean, there's obviously two questions there. There's like what it looks like in the future, but I'm more talking about what it looked like for the Osaka build. How did you structure the weeks, and sort of how long did you view that marathon block specifically to be, and where were you at the start of the block? Sorry, a few questions there.
Yeah, of course. I'll start with how we structure our training. So we're on a pretty conventional setup where Tuesday is an interval session, Friday's a threshold session, and then Sunday's a pretty steady long run. And then we kind of just build the volume in from there. So that's our structure, I guess. And then in terms of how I started, I think I probably looked at it. I look at most marathon blocks with about a 16-week approach. The first 6 weeks isn't marathon training essentially. It's just getting into shape in terms of physically for me. And in my case, that's more of a weight reduction in that first 6 weeks. So that's what I really focused on for Osaka. And then I built into, with that, I capped my volume at about 80 kilometers per week for that first 6 weeks. And I do that because when I hit 10 weeks and the training starts to build and the sessions get harder, I obviously feel a lot heavier for those 10 weeks. And then that obviously helps me with my sessions, and it also helps me so I can run bigger volume. So this time around, I think I peaked at 150 kilometers for I think only 1 week, but the 2 or 3 weeks around that were around 140, 145. So I'd say as an average over the 10 weeks, I would have been around 130, 135. And I think that worked for me. That's the highest I've gone. I felt great through that whole period as well. I mean, I had some soreness, but no real serious niggles at all. So I'm taking a lot of confidence from that. And I think that just goes down to the last sort of 3 or 4 years of being pretty consistent. You know, I've really tried to be consistent over the whole year, whereas in the past I've struggled with motivation in certain periods of the year, especially summer, which is why the last couple of years I've really leaned into training in the heat and booking a race at the end of summer so then I can train through summer and then, you know, and that just keeps me motivated. And it's been something that I've learned to love and learned to appreciate is just I probably prefer to train in the heat than snow. It's just me personally. I think it's easy to get out the door, and I love that I'm here on the Gold Coast during summer. It's the sun's coming up at 4:30 in the morning, so you're kind of naturally waking up at that time anyway. So you can get in a little bit earlier, so the heat's not too high. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. But I hope that answered your questions. I'm not sure if there was another one in there.
Yeah, sorry, I shot like 3 or 4 questions at you at once. I've got a bad habit of doing that sometimes, but no, it was you answered the core question about, you know, the overall training philosophy. Um, we've spoken before about one thing I found interesting about I didn't actually realize this until a couple of months ago when we were having a coffee one day after one of your workouts, and it's that you're actually, or at least you were, like me, I used to be, quite fast over like 100 meters and 200 meters back when I was, you know, when we were a bit younger. I think you referenced a 23 or a 24-second 200. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's pretty fast. I mean, most marathon runners nowadays are probably having a hard time breaking 30 seconds for a 200 meters. What I'm getting at here is like, have you discussed with Kyle yet, or do you think about speed much when it comes to progressing in the marathon? I think you're actually potentially in the boat at the moment of still like, because you've only been running for, you know, for 5 or 6 years seriously, probably continuing to do just high volume is going to help you move forward anyway, because you're just accumulating that lifetime mileage. But I think what's interesting, in my perspective anyway, interesting about you is you probably have quite a lot of room to move because you have that natural pure speed deep down there somewhere. It just has to be like reactivated in a way. Like you might not ever get back down to 23, 24, but if you try to get back down to 25 or 24, that very well may move the needle forward in many other aspects in terms of paces slower than that. You know, what do you think about that whole idea, and have you discussed it with Kyle yet?
Look, we haven't discussed it. It's something that's probably popped up just recently talking to you. It's popped up a little bit just because that's kind of, you know, what you always preached in terms of for you, because you've got lifetime mileage. But you're right. I think what is working for me at the moment, and the reason I'm getting some improvements now after a long slog is the fact that the volume's starting to accumulate in my legs over the years, and I'm starting to reap the benefits of that. I think it's definitely something I'll look at doing in the future. I would be open to trying it now, like if that's what Kyle and others think will work for me. And if I start to plateau, I think that might be something that I can change up. It's not something I'm probably going to just go straight into now while I'm still improving the way that I am. So if what's working, I'm going to keep persisting with that, I think, at this stage. After Gold Coast Marathon this year, I probably won't run another serious marathon in the back half of the year. So maybe it's something that I add into some training, just, you know, dribble some in here and there. I've never focused on trying to run a 5K fast or a 10K fast. I've never really been interested, to be honest. But maybe that's something I do in the later half of this year, and then start a marathon block in the summer of next year. So yeah, it's definitely something that's starting to come up, and I just always thought it was not that necessary for running a marathon. I just thought it was because these marathon efforts and marathon paces, you know, they're not, to me, they're not fast. Like, I don't think they don't feel fast to me. It's, you know, but now that I'm getting it, you know, down the marathon time further and further down, I think it's starting to become more necessary, I think. Yeah.
I think the thing that throws a lot of people off about it is they think, oh, the marathon's like basically 100% aerobic. So why would you do anaerobic training? But you have to think, you almost have to think differently to that and think, yeah, but it comes down to like two things that you could argue against that is top end speed. Like if you can only run 30 seconds for a 200, then 10% slower than that is obviously going to feel a certain way. But then if you can move that 30 seconds to 27 seconds, 30% slower than that, 10% slower than that is going to feel the same way, but that's going to be faster. So
Yeah.
if you think about it
Yeah,
like
it
that.
makes sense when you break it down like that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is mechanics. Like if you practice sprinting and speed all the time, you unlock and open up certain areas of your glutes and hips and hamstrings so that you're just able to stride out a little bit more. And that takes quite a few sessions of hill sprints or flat sprints. But yeah, it's
And
interesting
I think
because
I need that too. I think I need that. The mechanics, like if you see a video of me running, it's pretty sad sight. It's I feel like I'm pretty tight, and because I've got very short legs, I'm I look like I'm shuffling along. So I think any speed work would definitely help me sort of release and feel a bit more relaxed and looser when I do run. So yeah, I think you're right. The mechanics I think will be a big thing for me as well if I'm doing some more sprint work and stride work, because I don't do any strides, Matt. I can't even tell you the last time I did a stride. I think it would have been like 5 years ago. So,
yeah.
you know, even that's pretty, even if I start doing things like that, who knows, maybe that might help.
Yeah. Oh, don't be hard on yourself. Like between 2021 and 2023, when I was trying to break 220 all the time, I wasn't doing any strides then either, none. And I think back and like, what a rookie error. Like just one session a week of like, I don't know, 10 by 10 seconds flat out or something like that probably would have been a huge help. And it's such a short thing to do. It doesn't take long. But then it's also about like, where does it fit in the week? You don't want to put it in just before a hard session or just after a hard session. And so when people are obsessed with mileage, and this isn't a jab at anyone, just in general, like so many marathon runners are obsessed with mileage, they think, oh, that's a waste of a day doing such a short session, but it's really not. Yeah, there's so many interesting things, and yeah, Canova's been preaching that stuff for a long time, and people have observed that, and a lot of people just ignore it, but it's a real thing for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned two things I'd like to talk more about. The body weight stuff is interesting because, yeah, preface by saying if the body weight stuff is triggering, for you, it's probably a good idea to skip ahead 5 minutes or so. Just because I'm very aware that there's a mental health side to this that can be difficult for some people to listen to. But we're just trying to speak more from this. I know you laugh when I use the word physics.
It's just physics. No, yeah, and there's a lot more to it than that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it than that. But power to weight ratio is a real thing. And you've learned that getting a little bit leaner and lighter has worked for you. So, yeah, how have you approached that?
Yeah, well, I'll start off by saying each to their own, right? So my body type is I tend to hold a little bit more body fat. It's just genetically how I am. So I do have to be a little bit careful in the off season and holidays. Like prime example, after a Osaka Marathon, I would have put on 3 kilos in 3 weeks quite easily. I enjoy my food, and my food drive is high. So it's something that I always have to, I don't obsess over it, but it's something that I always have to be quite mindful of at different periods of where I am in the year in terms of training. So I always like to sort of reassess where I'm at the 16-week mark. And that for me right now is I'm fluctuating at late 69 to 70 at the moment. And I'd like to get down to 66, 65 during this next 6 weeks. And then naturally, because I'm training more and then eating more, I'll probably sit around 66, 67 to race. So I find that training my sessions, everything, I feel so much better when I'm around that type of weight. So I can't argue, or it's really hard to say that it's not good for me. So that's why I like to do the weight cut. And I do that by I do it very carefully as well. Like it is aggressive, but I also manage the kilometers that I run. I look at fueling for the hard session, so I'll always do a big carbohydrate dinner the night before a session, and then I'll always fuel for breakfast the morning of, and then post workout. And then I'll try and limit my calories when I don't have something hard, or if it's a lighter session, so on and so forth. So I try and do it the smartest way possible. I don't know if it's the right way, who knows, but I like being the guinea pig and I like experimenting. And I wrote on my Strava this morning, which you might have seen, but I just wrote big goals, big risks. So I understand it's risky and I'm fully prepared for that. So yeah, that's just the way I feel with my training. Is I can keep up with some faster people when I'm lighter, which also helps me mentally. So there's that part of it as well.
When I when I started taking Ozempic last year or year before, I played around with it a bit, just in a microdose. I got a lot of heat online, and you've giggled with me, about that. Even though some of it has been a bit difficult to hear. What did you think about that? Like, what did you think about? What's your opinion on this stuff? Because I think I'm not by no means do I think it's a good idea for people to take. Let me be very clear. There are risks involved in anything to do with especially any medicine that might alter your body in any way, shape, or form. I think the thing that people forget, though, is that you can microdose. You can take small doses of it, and all it does is it just makes you a little bit less hungry, and then you can plan your calories in an easier way. And I'll never forget listening to a podcast with the Enhanced Games founders who take Ozempic, and they just called it outsourced discipline to take Ozempic, because you just don't get that hungry, and so you can easily plan your day and all these things. What was your opinion? Because I know you well enough to know that you think about things, at least in this regard, the same way as me. What did you think about that? And did you think the heat was deserved?
No, I think people can do what they want, right? I don't judge anyone for that, whether or not I think it's right or wrong. In this case, I don't think what you did was wrong. I think at the time it's marketed as an appetite suppressant. Where it gets tricky for me is are people fueling correctly for the sessions if they're not hungry? I think that's probably the big question mark. Is, from my understanding, it just means you just don't get hungry, right? So you don't eat as much, therefore you drop the weight. But if you're doing hard workouts and you're continuing to train the way you normally train, I think that's where it gets a bit dangerous, which is why I've kind of done my setup with I'm limiting my kilometers because I'm eating less. It's so hard to eat less. Like, I'm hungry all the time, but I think my motivation is to run faster than the marathon. So that's my motivation, to get through those hunger periods. And then I have little tricks that I have, like, soda water works really well for me when I'm really hungry. Little things like that. So in your case, I was all for it. Like, I like people experimenting and biohacking and doing all those types of things, because eventually, we all might be on it. Who knows? So someone's got to try it and give their feedback. I think there's only so much you can get from a science paper or whatever the studies are, because the real result is when people try it and give their feedback, in my opinion.
Yeah. And I think the thing that was difficult about Ozempic, or semaglutide, because there's a few different types of Ozempic's the marketing name, GLP-1, is the news that came out about it in the first year or two was just so negative. There was all these news cycles going, yeah, if you take it, you'll lose 10 kilos of muscle. And it's like, and people were commenting on, like, the YouTube and the podcast, being like, you'll lose 10 kilos of muscle. I'm like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You just don't get as hungry, and then it's up to you to control what happens then.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's amazing how powerful the news can be. Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's great overall, in terms of, if anyone that is struggling with obesity, I think it's a great tool for people to use. But yeah, as long as people aren't taking advantage of it in the wrong ways, when body image starts coming into it, that's a different story. But I think in terms of what you were trying to do, it's purely for performance. And I think so be it. It's fine.
Mm,
Move on.
yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned just before that you posted on Strava this morning and you put some goals out there for the year. I love it. In Australia, there's a thing that people don't really know about, especially in the US, and it's a thing called tall poppy syndrome. And I wish I had the definition up here. Actually, let me just get it quickly. Tall
Yeah, look it
poppy
up.
syndrome. It's something that's interesting because it's only really a big thing in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So the tall poppy syndrome is a cultural phenomenon common in Australia and New Zealand where individuals with high achievements or public success are criticized, resented, or cut down to bring them back to the perceived level of equality. It reflects a form of social leveling or envy targeting those who stand out. And so, what I noticed when I was growing up in Australia is that if you did try and sort of do anything that was a bit, that may make you stand out a bit, it may make you a bit famous or whatnot, people tend to have a bit of a go at you about it. And when I moved to Finland in 2012 and then subsequently US down the road, I noticed that it wasn't a thing there. People wouldn't judge you if you tried to do something out of the ordinary. And so I'd like to hear your opinion on tall poppy syndrome, how it may or may not have affected you in your life, because it's affected me for sure. Because when I was younger, I was a lot less inclined to share my journey. But yeah, I'm keen to hear what you think about it and how you feel about it talking on a podcast where quite a few people listen now.
Yeah, look, this is getting very this is getting very deep for me. Because I think I struggled with it. I think I was a person that had tall poppy syndrome for a long time. I always thought that I always liked the humble person. I was like the person that went about their business and did it quietly and successfully and didn't talk about it. But I've really changed my mind on that. And the reason you mentioned my Strava post this morning, that a lot of thought went into that. Not into what I wrote, but just into thinking whether or not I wanted to post something about my training. It's something that I've always struggled with, putting myself out there, and it's more caring what people think of me, which I think stems from the tall poppy syndrome. There's other things that it stems from, like my upbringing. I was always taught, I'm Italian, so my family was always seen but not heard. That was kind of the thing that was brought up with us kids. So I think that plays a part in it as well, caring what people think of me. So that was me taking that first step to try and overcome that fear of what people think of me. I can't believe we're talking about this, to be honest, but it's nice to get it off my chest as well. But yeah, it's something. Tall poppy syndrome is real. It so is here, and I always look at like the NBA in America, for example. You look at the top guys there, the best in the world or the best in their league are generally the most outspoken, and I don't want to say arrogant, but their ego is high. And I think there's something in that if you can portray a confidence, or if you're so confident, then the results will follow. So this is a long journey for me in terms of putting myself out there and starting to do things that I wouldn't normally do because I was worried about what people thought of me. And yeah, that's my take on tall poppy syndrome. It is real here. It is such a problem, and yeah, you just see it so much, especially on social media. You can just scroll through some comments and people putting themselves out there, and they just cop it. And it's whether or not you agree with their opinion or not, it's unwarranted. Some of the things that you read.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. I was just in Bali and I was meeting a few Australian guys, and Jack Ahern, who I've just recently started working with, he's probably listening. You know, one of his friends who I met, lovely guy, got along with him super well, really recommending a whole lot of things for my sacral stress fracture return. But I noticed that he kind of, I won't name him, but he was like, he hated almost every influencer that I mentioned. And he was an Aussie, and I was like, it's almost he wasn't aware of the tall poppy syndrome sort of in the back of his mind, I thought.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So your Strava post this morning was first session back this morning, 16 weeks to Gold Coast Marathon, plans to do a 4 to 6 week weight cut post-holiday and capping my volume at 100K a week. Then I'll go hard for 10 weeks to try and shoot for a big PB. big goals, big risks. Man, I'm just jealous that you can actually train for Gold Coast Marathon. I'd love to be able to train for Gold Coast Marathon.
I know. Whenever I talk about running with you, I feel a little bit sad or a bit bad that I'm
Ah,
talking about it with you. But yeah, I know it's your life and you do it all day, so I guess that's okay. But yeah, yeah, that's the plan essentially is to take a big risk and hopefully it'll pay off and yeah, we'll see what happens.
yeah. Excited to follow along. We'll put Marty's Strava link in the description of the podcast. I think PB is 246. So, hopefully, I mean, Kyle should be the one talking about this, not me. I was about to put your goal out there, but I won't do that. Um, so another good topic that you brought up earlier is the how bad do you want it? The book by Matt Fitzgerald, which you recommended to me about 3 months ago now. I had heard of the book beforehand, and I'd actually read snippets here and there, but I hadn't sort of really digested it. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned from that book, and how are you applying them to your training and racing?
Probably, I love that book, and it's something that I read, multiple times. I've read multiple times, and I'll pick and choose certain sections to read before a race. I think the biggest thing I've got from that book is the perception of effort and not tying a pace to a particular effort. Um, for example, just to make it clearer, 4 minutes per K scared me for a long time. I always tied that to what my marathon pace was, and it really scared me to think that I have to hold 4 minutes for 42 kilometers. And I think breaking through that mental barrier or that threshold of saying no, I can hold that, or if not quicker, stop thinking about the number and started running to how I felt in that training session. Uh, for example, when you were on the bike with me for one of my long marathon sessions, I was running my 10-minute efforts at 342, 343, and I wasn't even thinking at that point. Look, that was probably a little bit ambitious in terms of what my marathon pace was, but I felt good on the day, and it felt like I could hold it for a long time. So it's just taking away, and maybe I got a huge gain from that physiologically, maybe. So running that kind of volume at that pace might have really pushed the needle forward for me for Osaka. I don't know, but I think if we keep trying to put a time on what our marathon session should be, I just think that we're capping ourselves and we're not really getting the full potential of what we could be.
Mm. Yeah, it's something people that are really interested in data and really study data and get really obsessed with it, they almost lose the awareness of the fact that, wait, me obsessing over these numbers so much might be actually like developing an anxiety and a fear over the next step over like, and heart rate's one of the biggest ones that to be clear, I'm not completely against heart rate. I think if you have the right approach to heart rate and you view it afterwards and you make decisions afterwards, it's a good idea. But for example, going slightly off topic to what you just mentioned, but I'll link it back. Um, if you're always looking at your heart rate and you've developed this opinion that your heart rate max is, I don't know, 190, for example, for a 30-year-old male, you might be doing the 220 minus your age thing. And then if you start to think, oh, like my heart rate today is 170 in a workout, you can almost like not realize that you're developing your perception of effort might rise because you're looking at that number and go, I'm so close to my max, this must be too hard. And the thing that I'll never be able to unsee is in Kenya. I met a lot of athletes that were straight out of high school. I was sure they weren't doping, just based on where they lived and stuff, who would train and they didn't know anything about heart rate. They didn't know anything about heart rate zones. They didn't even really know what threshold was. And they were just like getting out there and running like really hard a couple of times a week with no paradigm of heart rate zones, of this and that. And they were running, 29 minutes for 10K at 18 years old in
Mm.
in Kenya at high altitude. And
Yeah.
so I saw that a lot and realized, wait, like all these different ideas about heart rate zones and stuff, like they might be great, but you don't have to abide by them. And actually really abiding by them closely and obsessing over them could be limiting you. And I see lots of runners go down that path. But what's great about your setup is Kyle's aware of all that stuff, and he tries to pull back on giving people paces a lot of the time. And he
Mhm.
he really thinks about it from the standpoint of sort of what we're talking about. But yeah, and the book, How Bad Do You Want It? There's a lot of sort of discussion about this in a roundabout way, right? It's sort of like sharing different stories about people performing really well,
Yeah.
that get away from that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the clear example is if you think a pace is hard, it will feel hard,
Mm.
and that's the crux of it is if you think that pace is going to feel hard, it probably will feel hard. So it's like let's not think about it. Let's just run. Let's just enjoy running. I think that's where a lot of people go wrong is they obsess over the numbers so much that they what you said is they limit themselves, and then it doesn't become enjoyable because they're not improving or that they're data driven. So they're like, oh, I ran faster last week, I'm getting worse. There's all those types of things. I think we just need to get back to enjoying running, and that's what I've really done in the last couple of years is just enjoyed the social side of it and enjoyed not looking at numbers so much and just relaxing and doing what I love every day. That's the key to it.
Yeah. And so what are some other ways that you've learned how to enjoy your running other than like the social side's a big deal, I think. You've got a really good group there, that I join as well when I'm able to, when I'm not don't have a bone stress injury. Um, and yeah, what other things do you notice are enjoyable with running? Like how into of course I know some of these answers, but like, do you find the whole shoe game interesting? Does that motivate you? Like what else do you find keeps the enjoyment going with running? Because it can be hard sometimes to really understand what is it about this that's enjoyable.
Prime example was today, first session back in over a month. So just the endorphins it gives me and it sets me up for the day. I come home to my family and everything's like, I feel good. I'm a better person. I think that's the big thing I love about it is, and I know you can get that from all forms of exercise, but running is my choice. So I think that's a huge thing. The social side is probably the biggest one for me is doing something that I love with people, with people that I, you know, enjoy hanging out with as well, with a coffee after or the chat or the dance is always great. I love all of that. And even the traveling side of it, just the amount of people that you meet traveling at races, like the recent Osaka trip, I met some really cool people over there. You introduced me to Jack, the professional, what do you call himself? The professional friend accumulator. Um, so yeah, just and even like I met a guy from Sweden who's now he's gonna come over and do Gold Coast Marathon. So you just meet so many cool people, and there's not many sports you can do at an amateur level that you get to do that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. I try and lean on that stuff as well, just the community aspect. I also just think it's fun to chase some sort of target, right? Like some sort of goal, easily definable goal. You either reach it or you don't. And especially if you can do that with friends, I think that's a big
Yeah,
deal.
there's no hiding, right? And that's what I love about it too. Yeah, you're right. It's having that goal, and if you don't hit it, you can pick your training apart, you can pick your race apart, and find out why and try and improve on it. And the excuses don't matter because the results there. So it's kind of like it's black and white, which is what I love.
Mm. Yeah, the other cool thing about running is, unlike in other sports, in team sports especially, where politics plays a big role, a coach might select people, he might not, or she, obviously. But with running, it's just you, the clock. No one's really. Of course, we face the challenge nowadays of getting into races because you have to be quite
Mm.
organized and planning in advance. But I think it's quite liberating and freeing to know it's you. No one can tell you what you can and can't do. There's a clock there, and it's just that's all it is. There's not too many more
Yeah,
sports like that. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. Like even cycling, for example, I hear this from a lot of cyclists. You can increase your threshold, your functional threshold as much as you can, but when you get in a race and if you're not in the right team environment or there's a lot of factors that can play there. Whereas running, it's just you and the clock, and whoever's the fittest on the day wins the race, right? So it's kind of pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Well, Matt Fitzgerald might argue against who's the fittest will win the race. He might argue to say the person that wants it the most and is the fittest, the combination of the two.
Yeah, we'll add that. Can you edit that and add that in?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've come across many examples of people that are fit, way fitter than like they show an indication of fitness in training, but then they don't quite race as well as they should.
Yeah. That's totally right. Yeah. I think that the example that he gave in that book was clear on that with the guy that won the Olympics or the World Championships, and he basically went into that race not fit, partying too much from his recent win, and he still went out and won the race when his manager and his coach said that he was in no shape to win that race. So yeah, it is true. It is true.
Yeah. I'll share a very quick story. I don't think I've shared on the podcast before, but I'll try and be really quick about it. I think it was in 2011, I had a half scholarship to my university because I was in the top few in Australia in 800 meters. And in order to keep that scholarship, I had to come top 3 at the university games in Australia every year. And the university games in Australia is a bit of a joke. Like it's not a very serious, it's nothing like NCAA. It's like nothing. It's more of a party week and then you just race at the end of the week. And I wasn't in very good shape leading into the university games one year, but I figured all the people better than me in the 800 meters in Australia were not at university. They were older than that. So I thought I should be able to come top 3 pretty easily. And then when I turned up there, I sort of partied through the week. It was like in September, like away from the track season. I learned that there was a guy, a 400 meter runner, that was stepping up to the 800 meter runner to the 800 meters at the university games, and he really wanted to run under 150, and that's a very fast time. And so I was like, oh damn, like I've been partying all week, like I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to do that because I'm not even really training that hard at the moment. I'm sort of just doing like easy volume. Cut a long story short, I got off the drinks when I found it out with 3 days notice. And ultimately, I ended up beating him on the day, but I ran 149 because I was forced to beat him. I just didn't think I was in any. I didn't think I was in anywhere near that 149 shape at the time. I thought I was in like 155 shape.
Yeah.
And that was just and that was just because I had to keep my university scholarship.
You had everything to race for.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, I only had to come top 3, but I think there was something about the guy stepping up to the 800 where I was like, no, I want to try and beat you. Yeah.
Well, competitive is being competitive in a race, or having that in the back of your mind. I think is a huge tool as well, especially if you want to run fast. For sure.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk a little bit about content creators and content that you currently find inspiring and interesting online. I know that you're a pretty big YouTube watcher like me. You follow the likes of, I'm not sure if you watch all of Truett's stuff, but I know that you watch a bit of it. Truett Haynes. You're a fan of Alfie Manthorpe, I know. I have a slight issue with you bringing him up too much on the podcast because he used to be the Trackstar founder and he trolled me a couple of times online, which I thought was a bit immature, but I think he's grown up since then. He's a very good runner, by the way. I know what he's currently trying to do with London Marathon, which is cool to follow. But who do you currently follow and who do you find inspirational online?
I think Alfie is just an elite that I just like the way he's going about his performances and competing. Obviously, I don't know him personally, so I'm sure he still looks young. So I don't even actually know how old he is, but if he was trolling you back in the day, he must have been very young. He's just good to watch because I like the way he's gone about really focusing on the shorter distances, and that now he's stepping up and he's quite real around what he wants to run at London. So it's just an interesting story, just another one to follow along. Is he entertaining? Probably not, but as a fan of the sport, it's probably just something that I like to follow and see what he's doing. In terms of entertainment-wise, Truett is up there for me with entertainment. I find him hilarious. Am I learning stuff? No, probably not. but I just enjoy watching him. So that's probably on the entertainment front. And then there's, look, I'm gonna say this. I don't think I've talked to you too much about it, but Hugo Fry is growing on me. Um, I think he's quite funny, and I love his little snippets of videos when he has a thought or something. You know, his recent one that he posted was really good, talking about his humidifier in his new room in London. I thought that was hilarious. But yeah, he's something that I find entertaining and obviously inspirational as well. Like he's a, you know, what did he run in recently in CIM? Was it 216 or 217?
He ran
Something like that.
217 at CIM, but then he came out and ran 29:40 something for 10K, but then 63:30 for half not long after that, which is
Yeah.
the half marathon's by far the best result there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty incredible his progression. So I'm sure he's copying it a little bit through his progression, his performances, but you know, it doesn't matter. It is what it is. So no, I really enjoy watching him at the moment. And I think I've mentioned to you about in terms of social media is the other Brady. He's
Mhm.
someone that's just I don't even know how he popped up on my radar, or how he popped up on my Instagram feed, but he's as I mentioned before, I've always struggled with putting myself out there and caring what people think of me. And I think he posted a video recently, which we've shared with each other. And you actually made note to go back to that when I'm feeling like someone's judging me, and go back and watch his video. So I think he's a really good one for me mentally in terms of, you know, overcoming, you know, those fears that I have, or those little demons that I have. So yeah, he's a good one as well. And um, I think that's about it. I mean, I do watch all the other ones. I love Floberg's videos when he does a recap. I'm not a shoe guy, so I don't like watching shoe reviews. I used to be a shoe guy. I've got a shed next to me, and there's so many shoes in there, it's ridiculous. But yeah, I'm not really into the shoe reviews or anything anymore. But yeah, I do watch. And Seth Demore, when I first started running, that was the other one I used to watch when I first
Oh,
started.
the OG.
Yeah, yeah, the OG. Used to watch him every. I think he used to post, so it'd come out. Did it come out in the morning here, or at night? Anyway, I used to watch his videos all the time. They were great. Yeah.
Yeah, he was one of the first guys putting himself right out there, doing daily vlogs for a while. He still does them, I think. Um, but yeah, yeah.
I'll never
Um,
forget. I met him in Boston in
oh yeah,
2023, and I was like a little fanboy, a little groupie. I was so excited. It was like the first time I'd ever met like an influencer. I felt so silly, and I feel silly talking about it. But yeah, I remember meeting him and thought, wow, you really, you know, when you watch someone every day and what they're doing in their life every day, you kind of just go, I know so much about you. You know nothing
yeah.
about me. It's a very strange concept or situation.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually never really had that happen, even though I do follow quite a few people closely online. Because I think the reason why it hasn't happened to me is because they're not runners, the people that I follow closely online.
Mm.
They're like other
Mm.
personality types that are really famous. But that would be weird. What do you think about? Do you follow along with Jake Barraclough or Ben Felton or Cole Gibbons?
Yeah, I do watch all of their videos. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's just so many, right? So, which is great for entertainment purposes, and especially if you love the sport, it's kind of good to follow along. Jake's awesome, of course. Like he's entertaining. I do learn. I do like his high volume approach. I think, but I think something probably needs to change eventually. But I think he's just so entertaining, and he's probably caught in that snowball of doing high volume because it's what people love to see. But I think people would watch regardless of what he does because he's entertaining and he has a great story, and yeah, and he's quite original. I think there's not many people who have gone to Japan and done that. Um, Cole, I haven't watched too much Cole recently, to be honest, but I do like his videos just because they're a bit more authentic and a bit vloggy, which is always a nice change up. And Ben Felton, we've spoken about before. I wish he was doing the marathon in Rotterdam. I just, yeah, I think as
What
I've
happened
said to
there?
you, if you're in PB 10K and half marathon shape. And if he's the times that he's doing there, I just don't see why you wouldn't have a swing at a marathon when you're in that type of shape. But yeah, anyway, it is what it is. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see what he does.
Yeah. Not sure what happened there. I've got my opinions, but I agree. I mean, two back-to-back 65:30s. Man, if you're a 2:22 guy and you're keen on the marathon, I think you're staring down the path of certainly breaking 2:20, probably running 2:16 if you've just got a couple of good marathon specific workouts under the belt.
Yeah,
It was a bit weird. It was a bit weird how that diversion. Sorry.
Yeah, unless he's playing the long game. You know, I don't know how old he is, but maybe he's really trying to. I don't know. I think his aspiration is to become a pro runner. Maybe I don't know what that essentially means. If what pro runner means anymore is that 210. So unless he's really thinking the long game to try and do something like that, then I guess I kind of understand it. But from an entertainment point of view and an amateur runner, if someone's running that fast over the half, you want to see them run a fast full.
Yeah. Yeah. I just thought it was a little, yeah, like I think that was the communication that he feels like he's a bit closer to the elite end in the 10K and the half. But becoming an elite 10, I'm being skeptical, I'm being critical, sorry, but like being competitive at the elite end in 10K is going to require like a 27:30. I don't know. I'm not sure if he has that in him, but I could be wrong. I mean, Truett Haynes is on podcast right now criticizing well-known coaches for being skeptical about where people could go. So maybe Ben can run 27:30 one day. I think, look, it boils down to like what you want to do, but I just thought it was weird that he named a series Road to Rotterdam and then changed like halfway through it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But I guess he's pivoted there, and maybe there's something that we don't know. Maybe something happened behind the scenes that we're not sure about. So
yeah. I know Victor's a big fan of the 10K, so maybe it was Victor. I don't know. Who knows? I'm a big Victor fan, so I should not put ideas out there that are potentially not true. But I was looking forward to seeing what Ben would run. To be honest, that was why I was a bit disappointed in the marathon. That is.
Yeah. No, it would have been good to see, but anyway, we'll have to wait and see what pops up next. Yeah. Maybe Chicago at the end of the year. Maybe.
Yeah. Lastly on that, I personally think if you wanted, well, it sounds like they've pivoted entirely from the marathon, but like if you want to be good at the marathon, I think it's good to practice marathon, like to practice racing it. Yeah.
Definitely. But he did mention in his video that he's in some kind of training consistent period where he's seeing a lot of improvements and training's going well. So I think if his argument was if he runs a marathon, he'll have to take some time off to recover and that type of thing. But again, the stimulus from the marathon should put you forward, right? And then me personally, like the mental improvements or the experience that you get from running a marathon far outweighs the recovery, I think, because you learn so much in a race. So yeah, look, there's two sides to it, but maybe he's just on a roll with his shorter distances and wants to keep it going.
Yeah. Sounds like that's probably a big part of it. Yeah. To wrap up this week, is there any podcasts that you're enjoying? Doesn't have to be running, but any fitness related ones. You sometimes share different ones with me. We both sometimes tune into the Chris Williamson Modern Wisdom pod. But yeah, running. Which pods do you listen to on like a weekly basis?
Running related, I would say I listen to Victor's now, so the Runners FM. For local, I listen to the Good Running guys because I'm mates with Chris Littlejohn. What else? Obviously, your one I listen to. I listen to Inside every now, not as much as I used to, but I do listen to them consistently. And in terms of non-running, the one that I've just picked up recently, and it's more so just what's going on in the world, is Tucker Carlson's pod.
Oh yeah.
I know he's very controversial. I understand that, but I think he's good for me because he dumbs it down for people. Like I understand the US politics too much. So I do find that the way he explains things is really clear for me to understand what's happening. And that's just a recent one I've started listening to, and the Chris Williamson one with the Diary, is it Diary of CEO? I listened. I got a lot out of that one. That was a really good one. Just little tips and tricks that you can pick up in there. I think the walking after a big meal, I do that anyway, but just to hear it, and no technology in the bedroom, that type of thing. Like I love all that kind of improve your life type of content. So they're the pods that I listen to.
Yeah, cool. Well, Marty, it's been fun to do this, and looking forward to sharing your journey more on the pod leading into Gold Coast and beyond. So you post all your updates on Strava, link in the description, a little bit on Instagram, hopefully more coming soon.
I'll try and do more on Instagram coming up, but I'm going to try and do more on Strava too, just to post my thoughts and feelings after each training session.
Yeah. I hope you're equipped with the tools to fight the tall poppy syndrome flying at you different directions.
It's a sorry not sorry mentality I'm going with.
I like it. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for listening in. Thanks Marty. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with more from Marty. But yeah, follow along on his Strava and Instagram. Link are in the description of this podcast. And we'll speak to you again very soon.